And so George Clooney calling on Biden not to seek re-election here. We're going to bring into the conversation our friend, political analyst Brian Sobel, to talk about what this means going forward. Brian, thanks for being with us here. I mean, what a day. We just went over kind of my lengthy peroration of more of these Democratic lawmakers who are calling on Biden to step aside. And now George Clooney. I mean, Brian, George Clooney and many other high-profile celebrities in L.A. 3 weeks ago raised $30 million for the Biden re-election campaign. 3 weeks later, he's saying, shouldn't have done it. Biden shouldn't run for re-election. $30 million, Brian. I mean, that is quite the payback, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. They in Hollywood can raise a lot of money. And people often ask me, well, why do all these presidential aspirants and other people come to California? Well, it's simple. California is an ATM. California is a decided state in terms of it being blue and who they'll vote for. But the money's here. And so that's why Hollywood types have a lot of influence. And by the way, in Northern California, in Silicon Valley, why they have a lot of influence on both sides of the aisle. They pony up real dollars. And that's the difference. So when George Clooney released the op-ed today in the New York Times, that had to have sent a huge shockwave through the Biden administration and the Biden campaign. And of course, you've read part of it. I encourage your viewers to find it online and read it. But he answers the question about what happens if you decide that Biden isn't your candidate. You know, what occurs? And he talks about in his op-ed, democracy is messy. It'll be messy to change horses at this late date, but that's the way it has to be. And he refers to the debate being the decider. It was clear to him during the debate that this wasn't the person he wanted to see move forward.
I mean, if you're George Clooney, do you ask for your money back from the Biden campaign? I mean, you have to wonder these questions here. I mean, would this move the needle, say, more than Senator Welch of Vermont or Bennett of Colorado or these 9 House Democrats? I mean, if you're hunkering down in the Biden campaign here and you see this, but you also see what's taking place on Capitol Hill, which has more weight, do you think?
Hollywood has a lot of weight.
Okay.
Silicon Valley has a lot of weight because it's attached to the lifeblood of any campaign, and that's the money. You know, Jerry Maguire, show me the money. That's what they look forward to in talking to these people about what they can raise for the party, for the individual. And you know, nine Dems in the House of Representatives, and there are hundreds of people. You can live with that. One senator, maybe, but when your support starts crumbling outside of the Beltway, which a lot of people tend to ignore anyway, that's very problematic for him.
So we have a live picture right now. This is outside the White House. The president and the first lady are welcoming the NATO leaders to the White House for a welcome dinner there. And you see President Biden and the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. Biden bestowing on Stoltenberg just yesterday the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Here,
yes.
You know, I want to go back to Bennett's comments on CNN yesterday. He said Trump is going to win, maybe in a landslide. He's not calling on Biden, though, to step aside from the race itself, to not seek re-election. Are they one and the same, though? Is that an implicit call on Biden to step aside without having to say Biden should step aside? Okay.
Andrew, absolutely. It's the same as your reference to the comments by Nancy Pelosi. She pulled a punch. She said, "Hey, I can't tell the president to step down, but what I will say is that we support any decision he makes." Kind of. The Schumer behind the scenes maneuvering. All of these people are moving away from the president, and of course, you know, that may also include people from the Obama camp, and others are saying it's time, Mr. President, to decide to move ahead and have another candidate who may have a chance of beating Donald Trump. And you can see the luminaries on the screen there, by the way.
Yeah, we just saw Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, Fumio
Yes.
Kishida of Japan here. You know, Brian, help me make sense. It seems like there's some cognitive dissonance going on. Many, like I said, are saying he possibly can't beat Trump, but they're also saying full-throatedly, we're with Biden. They're saying that with whatever he decides to do. We're with Biden with whatever he decides to do. He's already decided what to do, Brian.
Right.
He said, I'm staying in. He wants this story to go away. He says, I'm not going anywhere. He's already decided what to do. And so many of these Democrats, especially today, are saying we're with him with whatever he decides to do. What does it mean?
Right. It means that they're signaling to him, hey, we want you to move off the stage, and we want to give you some space to do that. And so he's saying, I'm going to continue to run. And and at the same time, they're saying, hey, basically, we don't want you to run. And so it's a tough spot for the president. Yeah. And, as I'm looking at these pictures with the fife and drum corps and all that, this is what somebody who has reached the level of the presidency, can enjoy. I mean, and it's hard to walk away from the pomp and circumstance and all the things that come with the presidency. And at the same time, he has to come to a very tough decision. And his inside group, his closest advisors, have to help him make a very, very tough decision.
Yeah, we're watching this all play out. It looks like kind of a stormy night there in Washington. It's about 7:45. All the NATO leaders gathered on the steps there. It's quite a sight there as well. But to your point, the trappings of power are quite seductive and intoxicating, Brian. No one gives up power so willingly, so voluntarily. Nope. To your point here, I want to put up this tweet more on George Clooney. He just called out Dem after Dem. He's saying top Democrats, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, and senators, representatives, and other candidates who face losing in November need to ask this president to voluntarily step aside. Of course, we know House Democratic leadership are meeting with senior Biden White House and senior Biden campaign officials tomorrow night. Obviously, President Biden has this press conference solo at that he'll be conducting tomorrow on the occasion of the NATO summit there in D.C. But, Brian, you hear so often from the Biden campaign specifically that Trump represents the gravest threat to our democracy since the founding of the republic. But if Biden says, I'm the only one who can beat Donald Trump, and then when George Stephanopoulos asks, well, what if you're not taking the oath of office January 20th, 2025, and Trump is, and Biden says, well, if I did my best, that's all I can do. Is that also a contradiction? If Biden is willing to say Trump might be president, how does the threat to democracy line hold?
So much of what we hear sometimes, Andrew, is just heightened hyperbole. The election of the seventh president of the United States, Andrew Jackson, the same way. Oh, it's going to be the ruination of the nation. He doesn't understand what the six predecessors went through to help found the nation. Every president comes in and faces a challenge. Every president comes in with the other side of the aisle saying, "Oh, this is going to be a disaster." Over the years, you just come to expect that. But there's some heightened rhetoric going on right now that's, in my view, way overblown.
Okay, Brian, I know I have asked you this question before, and I'm going to do so again. We're less than 4 months away from Election Day. We're less than a week away from the RNC convention. We're being told that, we know the DNC is going to have a virtual roll call before the in-person convention there in Chicago. And you've heard from some of these senior Democrats, including Pelosi today, saying, with whatever happens, it needs to happen soon. What do you think is going to happen? Is Biden accepting the nomination in Chicago next month?
I think there has to be a decision soon. I'm not an expert on the rules of the Democrat convention, but to the extent that the president can make a decision you know, a couple of weeks from now or whatever, I would think that he would be encouraged to do that by his insiders. However, time is running out, and it has to be something that, in my view, a decision has to be made very, very soon, because otherwise it delays the opportunity of the replacement to really get out there quickly and to enjoy the time necessary to campaign for the presidency.
Yeah, but Ryan, just lastly, too, I mean, how high stakes is the press conference tomorrow? We know he sat down with George Stephanopoulos on Friday. We're also learning, Brian, on Monday, he'll sit down with Lester Holt of NBC News. Monday night, he called in yesterday to Morning Joe on MSNBC. And kind of the consensus had formed that none of those appearances in the media were damning or perilous. They kind of kept the situation status quo with Biden's stance as the candidate here. Is the press conference a whole new beast to be reckoned with?
Yes. I think that enough of the media have come to the conclusion that they need to start asking tough questions, and it's going to be unscripted. And then we know that the two recent radio interviews that he did, the White House sent out the questions to the interviewers. That's not good. He called into the Morning Joe show. Well, calling in means he could sit there with all kinds of notes in front of him. But the media conference with the media in front of him, now he will be directing, to the audience, probably favorites in the sense of who would be asking questions. But even so, if those people are doing their job, they're going to ask very tough questions of the president, and we're going to get a real sense of whether he's on his game tomorrow or not. And again, with Lester Holt, who has a good reputation, I think that Lester Holt will come in and ask some very tough questions, and I don't think the president will have a preview of those. So he's got some very tough days until Monday, and including Monday.
Yeah, that seems to be the feeling right now. The White House, Biden campaign are dug in, no matter the calls. Do you get that sense?
Yes, for the moment.
Okay.
I think the First Lady and people who are closest to the president say, hey, we can weather this thing. We just got to get through this rough patch.
Okay.
Well, if the rough patch remains rough, it's a done deal.
Yeah, this is quite the long rough patch. Brian Sobel, thanks so much for being with us here. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Have a great evening.